And when they cut half the people, it's like evisceration by 1,000 cuts. So you want to do this? Have the fight with us in Congress. Let's make sure we get the issues out there. I'm so mad. I'm spitting mad about this because it's hurting the people who can't vote. Children don't vote. Let's not take away their opportunity.
Man, straight into my veins. I voted for every syllable of that. That's Randy Weingarten again on MSNBC panicking. The Department of Education is slashing its workforce with reports that nearly half of the federal bureaucrats employed there have been fired or removed. All the cuts to the Department of Education are a direct response to the grotesque erosion of our educational standards. The very institutions meant to enlighten and empower the next generation are now drowning in a swamp of corruption and politically charged agendas. The Department of Education itself is under fire. Its bloated budget's a monument to wasteful spending. Parents are rightly outraged as their children are fed toxic ideologies instead of valuable knowledge. Schools have been pushing radical narratives that confuse young minds, all while our kids fall behind in fundamental education. And the Trump administration is finally doing something about this disaster. Trump has been rooting out wokeness at every level, starting with our military, Pete Hegseth, and the FAA. And now he's got his sights set on our educational system. What we have to understand here is that the disasters in our nation's education system far exceed the need for mere budget cuts. They manifest in declining literacy rates and a curriculum that increasingly serves divisive narratives rather than in facts. But today we've got a distinguished guest, Ben Merkle, who's leading the charge against this educational corruption. He is the president of New St. Andrews College, a distinct place of learning for students after high school that prioritizes the eternal values of truth, goodness, and beauty at the collegiate level. Ben, welcome, my friend. Great to have you back. Haven't seen you in a while.
Thanks so much. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's an honor always to have you, my friend. So the Trump administration's recent cuts to the Department of Education are obviously signaling a major shift, seemingly in the right direction. So, Ben, in your view, what more needs to be done to reform education, particularly at the federal level?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is a glorious start. Like, as you said, right into my veins. This is exactly what we voted for, and it's funny seeing people so distraught and seemingly surprised at something that was, I'm going to close the Department of Education. I mean, this was clear. There's no fake or dodge or anything. This is what was promised, and he's making good on his promise, which I suppose is surprising. We tend to not expect people to actually do that, but Trump is doing a wonderful job of making good on the promise. I would say, what's going to happen is it's going to get divided up and probably passed on to other departments. And so there's still a lot of work that has to happen because a lot of these same functions are going to be there, just passed on to other departments. I think that one major thing is, student loans and to a lesser extent Pell Grants, but I think student loans especially need to get attacked. I think what needs to happen is I think student loans need to be either privatized or colleges need to be on the hook for colleges should be backing those loans instead of the American taxpayer. If you as a college believe in the quality of your product, you should be willing to put your endowment, to stake your endowment on that. Colleges should be the guarantors for these student loans. And I think if you did that, you would suddenly see a real market correction as colleges start to realize really quickly what's irresponsible and what's responsible. I'd love to see that happen. I'd love to see Pell Grants trimmed or eliminated entirely. I think one thing that is a real thing that we're going to have to look out for is frequently, personnel is policy. And so dividing up the Department of Ed and just pushing them into other departments, if you've got the same people going into that department, you've just kind of spread the toxicity out. That's why I think it's really great to see the elimination of, cutting half of these positions and just laying them off. But I think as these duties are passed out, you're really going to have to make sure that you're not getting sabotaged by mid-level bureaucrats who have managed to sort of carve out ways to hang on and continue the problems there. And then the last thing I think is we have to. Trump has said this needs to be pushed to the state level, which is, I think, exactly right. He should be pushing it down from the federal level, but that only works if people at the state level are ready to grab the baton and take it to the next step. And I think one of the real dangers right now is, one really important principle of war is the principle of pursuit. When you win a battle, you're exhausted, you're elated that you've won and all of that, and there's a strong tendency to want to now rest. But it's really important when you win a battle to immediately pursue, because otherwise your enemy just regroups and you're going to fight them again tomorrow, and maybe you're going to lose. But if you can pursue, you can actually make this victory into something lasting. And I think a lot of us conservatives who are watching Trump's victory at the federal level, there's a little bit of we're kind of armchair quarterbacks watching the NFL game and rooting for all of this happening, but not realizing that if this gets past the state level, we need to suit up and get in, and we need to carry on this work at the state level.
Yes. Yeah, I'm coming up with an alliteration here as I'm listening to you. Budget, bureaucrats, and backyard politics. I think that's
There you go.
I think that's brilliant. I love that, dude. That's like my video tomorrow. That is so cool. Thank you. No,
Yeah.
I think that's so brilliant. I love how you're hitting it at the financial level, and in terms of all the loans and how we end up bailing them out half the time, or how it's used as a political football during the Biden era with the student loan forgiveness. That was just crazy. And then the bureaucrats and how the people are policy when all's said and done. And then, we're going to have to take it at the state level. It's great he's bringing it to the state, education back to the state level. But, well, sorry, California. Sorry, Vermont. You guys are going to still have your problems. Yeah. Whereas at least now it's giving a chance for sane states, red states, as it were, to really do something here. By the way, congratulations. I heard Idaho is getting an extra electoral college vote in the 2030 census coming up. I don't know if you heard that. So I guess a lot of people are moving.
I thought it was coming. So
yeah, it's great. It's awesome. It's all the red states. They're all gaining. So, I'm just curious about, I mean, you've been in this on the front lines of this for years now. How are we able to get here to even begin with? How did this disaster happen? I know, so education department starts in 1979, but it didn't take long for all this corruption and all these radical ideologies to infest the system. So how did the Department of Education end up becoming such a bloated monument of waste and
as far as I understand it, I mean, it was Department of Education is started by Carter, and it was a campaign promise to the teachers unions that it was kind of the way he gets their vote is the promise of starting a Department of Education. So it was already, as far as I can tell, it was from the inception. I think it was already captured by a certain kind of progressive spirit that was always going to have the steering wheel between the shoulder blades, and so I think that it's been that way for some time now. The constant increasing of federal financial aid through student loans and then through the Pell Grant, constantly increasing that, and then attaching, that's all administered by the Department of Education. So for these schools, for these colleges and universities, that's their they can't live without that. If you cut that funding, a lot of these schools go down or have to completely remake themselves. And so they're going to answer to the whims of this department really quickly. And so that's when you start getting under Obama, and then under Biden, you've got these dear colleague letters about, the guys getting to use the girls' shower and that sort of thing. And it's attached to that federal money. So everybody's going to try to figure out how to accommodate it one way or another.
Right. I know you guys are private, a private college, but did you feel the pressure of that at all, particularly during the Obama years, Biden years, of having to capitulate to some of those?
No, we don't, because we don't take any of the Title IV money. That's Pell Grants and student loans or any other government grants. We don't take any federal money. We don't take any state money. During the COVID crisis, I remember the state called me up and offered me a check. They got a check for $150,000 or something like that. They just want the address to send it. and telling them, no, we don't want your money. So once you say no to the money, there's significant freedom. Now, you still have to negotiate. Department of Education still oversees, well, not oversees, they have influence on accreditation agencies, although there's a certain amount of independency there. And so they can still kind of try to steer things with us a little bit, but we've got significant distance. You never can get all the way out of everything, but we've got enough distance by not taking the Title IV money that we're kind of like, we would be the last ones anybody would get.
I see. Yeah, and that creates that at least a somewhat safe buffer for sure. I know I talked to a lot of parents. I was in the classical education world for 2 decades, and I know a lot of parents are very frustrated. They're frustrated with this college system where the costs keep going up, but the standards all seem to just be plummeting.
Yeah.
What hope is there? You're on the forefront of an educational renaissance that's happening right now. Give parents a sense of hope that this golden age is extending, it most especially into the realm of college education.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think it's just really important to speak in terms of hope. I think that it's really easy to get this idea that everything always ships to this progressive left and then gets destroyed. And that's just not the case. And if you need proof, look at what we're living through right now. It's possible to turn things around and start winning. And I would say, to the best of my understanding, the most significant win we've had in the last several decades has been the launch and growth of the classical Christian education movement. We've built something that's K-12, that's distinct, it's different, and it's the best. And I think that is our biggest win at the moment. The unfortunate thing is it goes K-12. We need that next layer of colleges that actually make good on the education that kids with this education are now worthy of. That's what NSA strives to be, but I think we need about 30 more like us.
Yes. Yeah. But I love what you're saying, because it is a tangible example of how the church is really doing something better than anybody else right now. That's the beauty. That's what I always loved about classical education. So I could point objectively to space and say, you see that over there? That's infinitely better than anything you guys got over in your woke secular world. Infinitely better.
Absolutely.
And yeah, can you give some examples to people, especially those who may not know what classical Christian education is all about? But at New St. Andrews, you are a classical Christian education rooted in truth, goodness, and beauty. Can you share some specific ways your curriculum equips students to, particularly to just resist the toxic ideologies we see pervading in other institutions, but also in such a way that allows them to flourish as human beings?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, probably the most important thing is our trying to stay as clear as we can on the Lordship of Jesus Christ. And so our freshmen begin in theology, they end their senior year in theology. They're inside a robust worshiping community. So I think that is the premier thing we do, is pointing them towards Christ. Under that, we've recovered what has been the traditional liberal arts education. So you can go back 1,000 years, and this is what colleges in the West were doing. The liberal arts education, it's a certain collection of intellectual disciplines put together in these courses, reading through a time-honored stack of great texts, and through that, teaching them a coherent view of the world, coherent under Christ, but coherent in that. This is one of the things that I think is really distinctive about the liberal arts, is that you teach these subjects as things that inform and relate to one another. So I see one of the real errors of the modern college movement is that we order our education along these very strict vocational disciplines. So you're learning just these vocational skills, and we don't want you to learn about that. We want you to learn about that. We want you to specialize in learning just how to perform this skill, with the idea that you'll get a piece of paper that allows you to perform this skill out in the workforce. And if you want to perform a different skill, you need to come and get the right piece of paper for that one.
Right.
And what we've done is we've created this picture of the world where it's like there are little sidewalks that you're allowed to walk on. I've got this degree that allows me to walk this sidewalk. I don't go off this sidewalk because I'm not licensed for that.
Right.
Liberal arts education, I like to say, basically gives you four-wheel drive. It tells you, get off the sidewalk, go where you want to go. And I think that relates to being under Christ, because we know we serve the King of the universe. All of this is his. And so you can get off the sidewalk and you can explore. And one of the things I love seeing in NSA grads is the disproportionate number of highly entrepreneurial starting businesses that you didn't even know that could exist. And that's really, I mean, that honestly is the future of the workforce. Try to pick the job skill that everybody needs 20 years from now. How do you even know what that's going to be? The job market is constantly changing. I think what you need is the adaptability and the understanding that all of creation coheres, and you are able to go out and master it. And I think that's really important. Other things, we do seek to restore rigor to the college education. It's shocking how much the rigor has dropped in the American university. And that, people roll their eyes. That's just people always saying, kids these days, I'm not being the grumpy old man. There's some really strong data to show. I think it's around 1960, they used to measure, they began measuring the amount of work that a college student has to put into their work, their college work over the course of a week. And the average student did 40 hours a week, which is what you would expect, 40-hour-a-week job. I think the last one I saw was down to 17 hours.
Wow.
Now, if you assume 12 hours of going to class, that's 5 hours of studying, compared to 12 hours of going to class in 1960 took 28 hours of studying. 28 hours down to 5 hours. College is not rigorous anymore at all. And that's, I think, one of the main reasons why we see these students graduating and not able to go on and get jobs. It's not that jobs aren't there. It's just that they aren't ready to work. They've lost that ability.
Yeah, they've lost the drive, the intellectual, moral drive to build and grow. This again. I was reading a really interesting article on Elon Musk. Elon Musk and the moral imagination of Elon Musk, and this journalist was making the argument that for Musk and Einstein, these fellows, they would never come up with the things they come up with without this incredibly nourished imagiation. Yeah. And the very fact that he wants to go to Mars and all this sort of stuff all comes from the books he was reading, and just the total world the literary world that he was immersing himself into. One of the things I love about what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that's why Elon it's interesting, because I think the fact that he didn't get the college degree is a bit of a point of pride for him, because I think that he would have seen that degree as telling him to stay on the sidewalk. We need an education that pushes you out, that tells you go wherever, achieve something big.
That's it. So let's work this out in practice. So how do students who have found themselves failed by a broken educational system — I don't know any other way of putting our educational system right now than broken — and how do you take them in and transfigure them into leaders who can actually ultimately fix this disaster?
Yeah, I mean, we're blessed that we have this small little town with an incredibly robust church community. We don't do dorms, because we've found that dorms basically intensify the I don't know, the infantile,
that's
quality.
Beautifully put. That's wonderfully
put. It infantilizes the whole thing in this imaginary little world. So we want our students to be in the real world. If you come here, we say, find an apartment, figure out how to make grilled cheese, figure out how to get, Wi-Fi and do your laundry and all that. And what you discover is, when you push that kind of responsibility onto them, these young kids, they're at 18, they're ready for these kinds of challenges. They want to be treated like adults. They want to walk into a class and get an assignment that scares the snot out of them. They actually do want that. So being willing to push them a little bit, expect them to be like adults, to give them this very rigorous integrated curriculum, where we're going to expect them to work a full week, be ready for these assignments. We really emphasize being able to write, being able to speak. Your finals here are a one-on-one with just you and the teacher. AI is not going to help you at all. You have to come in ready
love
to
it.
know your stuff. And then, like I said, lived out in this robust Christian community, it ends up becoming this time of both testing and pushing yourself to the limit while also being nurtured and mentored by faithfulness in a way that I see the product I'm confident is one of the best that is out there, and has been really rewarding to see.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I saw it in my academic career of 20 years. I just watched student after student. Gang, if you don't know, I had a number of different students who ended up going to NSA, New St. Andrews College, and boy, I think 80% of them end up staying there. They just love the community.
That is
Yeah.
often the thing we're taunted with, that students will stay here, get married, and never leave. And I would say we do have a high percentage that end up starting families that get married their senior year, and many of them do stay. But I would say if you watch them, they stay for 3 or 4 years, and then they go and they start something somewhere else. But it's like they're at this moment where they're starting a family and they've got their first job, and they want to stay where they're getting mentored a little bit longer. But it's usually after a few years they go, okay, now it's time for me to go do something.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Well, it's a testimony to how life transformative NSA really is. And I've just heard testimony after time. I couldn't even count them of how many lives you have transformed through the college experience there. Gang, there really is an amazing educational renaissance that's happening. We talk about classical education renaissance going on all across the country, but really ground zero of that educational renaissance is right here, NSA, New St. Andrews College. And you cannot imagine the amazing just magic of education that's happening there. So if you want to find out more, just click on the link in the description below. They'll send you tons of information. You're going to absolutely love it. And I think if you go out there for a visit, you'll see exactly what Ben's talking about. This is an amazing, amazing moment in our nation's time right now. And I really think in many ways started in Moscow, Idaho at NSA. So definitely click on that link below and check them out. Thanks so much, Ben. Let's have you back soon. I mean, every day's Christmas right now in many respects. So
anytime.
Can't imagine what's going to happen in education over the next year.
Yeah, it's a blast.
Awesome.